The longer I procrastinate making any videos, the more new taxa I have to cover. Hello everyone, Paleo Nerd here, and welcome back to another natural history update. This time I'm going to go over a bunch of new Dromaeosaur discoveries, mostly new taxa, and how they might affect our understanding of this group of theropods. The natural history videos I've currently put out are some of my least favorite videos to rewatch, mostly because of how poorly they aged, the cringy cladograms I made in Microsoft Paint before I discovered tree graph, and my overindulgence in making up new clades based solely on superficial similarities or even just being found in the same region. For example, in my second Tyrannosaurus Part 1 video, I treated Electrosauridae as a monophyletic group of non-Eutyrannosaurs, when the clade as I described it is more of a grade leading to Eutyrannosauria, which would make Electrosauridae paraphyletic. Another example, more relevant to this video in particular, is the way I made it seem like Dromaeosaur Phylogeny has all been figured out, when that couldn't be further from the truth. Once you get past Unanlagiids and Microraptorines and get to Eudromaeosaurs, the phylogeny has very few constants between analyses, often consisting of large polytomies and unstable taxa. Even Deinonychus, one of the most completely known of all Eudromaeosaurs, is a very unstable taxon in phylogenetic analyses, often moving from Dromaeosaurinae to Velociraptorinae to somewhere in between. So I think you can imagine how fucked other more fragmentary Eudromaeosaurs are when it comes to having consistent phylogenetic positions. Normally, I'd list all new taxa in the order they were published, but 2021 brought us two new Dromaeosaurs from the same formation, that being the Burungoyat formation in Mongolia, which likely dates to the early Maastrichtian, about 72 to 71 million years ago, so I'll start with those two, even though their descriptions were published months apart from each other. It should be noted that both of these have been known about for a while under informal names, but they hadn't been formally named and described until 2021. Also keep in mind that there will be many names in this video that may be hard to pronounce, so apologies in advance if I mispronounce any of them. First in this video, and the first non-avian dinosaur of 2021, is Shri Devi, named after a Buddhist deity, also known as Palden Lamo. It is known from a mostly complete skeleton, which was discovered on July 5, 1991 by Mark Norell. Norell nicknamed the specimen Ichabod Craniosaurus after the fact that the specimen was missing its head. Later, in 1999, the specimen was tentatively referred to Velociraptor mongoliensis, but the specimen was finally officially described on January 13, 2021 by Mark Norell, Alan Turner, and Shaina Montanari, who found it to be a distinct genus and species. I couldn't find any measurements for this specimen, oddly enough, but I assume it's close in size to Velociraptor since it was once classified as such and is closely related, so that means about 2 meters or 6 feet long, half a meter or almost 2 feet tall at the hip, and weighing around 15 kilograms or 33 pounds. When placed in a phylogenetic analysis, Shri Devi was found to be the sister taxon of Velociraptor mongoliensis, and given that the Burungoyat formation likely directly overlies the Yaducta formation where Velociraptor is found, it's possible that Shri Devi is a direct descendant of Velociraptor, just like its contemporary Bagaceratops is believed to be descended from Protoceratops, but that's just speculation on my part. On November 8, 2021, we got the description of another Dromaeosaur from the Burungoyat formation, and like Shri Devi, we've known about the specimen for a while. Kuru kulla follows the same naming convention as Shri Devi, being named after another Buddhist deity. It was first mentioned in 1999, listed in the bibliography of the description of Achillobator under the name Iracoraptor, with the specific listing being an abstract that was later released with no mention of the name Iracoraptor. It has also been referenced in multiple papers by the specimen number IGM 100/981, which the description of Kuru kulla confirmed to be the same specimen as Eudromaeosaur. Kuru kulla also didn't get any size estimates in its description, nor can I find any, but once again I assume it's around the same size as other velociraptorines. Being described by some of the same people as Shri Devi, Kuru kulla was placed in the same phylogenetic matrix, where it emerged as the sister taxon of Allosaurus mongoliensis from the overlying Namek formation. While Vectiraptor was not included in this analysis, it is also presumably part of this same clade, having previously been placed as closer to Allosaurus than other Dromaeosaurs. This could mean that Allosaurus is a direct descendant of Kuru kulla, or that Kuru kulla split off into Allosaurus and Vectiraptor, but once again that's just speculation. With two velociraptorine dromaeosaurs in the same formation, and thus presumably in the same ecosystem at around the same time, you might wonder how they managed to coexist alongside each other without directly competing for food. Unfortunately, the answer for now is we don't know, since Shri Devi didn't preserve a skull and Kuru kulla only preserved the lower jaw, so we can't properly look at their skull anatomy and see what kind of prey they might have eaten. It's possible that one species ate larger prey while the other ate smaller prey, but which is hard to tell at the moment. Regardless, both Dromaeosaurs had a wide variety of potential prey, as Barungoyat has lizards, multituberculates, alvarezsaurs like Parvicurosaur, birds like Gobipteryx, the ceratopsians Bagaceratops and Breviceratops, the Hauscaraptorine Hosanpes, the Pachycephalosaur Tylocephali, and oviraptorids like Conchoraptor, Heyuania, and Nemectomia. Shri Devi and Kuru kulla also coexisted with larger dinosaurs like the Titanosaur Kazitosaurus and several ankylosaurs like Seychenia, Tarkia, and Zarapelta. July 28, 2021 saw the description of Kansaignathus sogdianus, the Kansai jaw from Sogdiana, a species of velociraptorine dromaeosaurid found in the Yalovak Formation in Tajikistan, which dates to the Santonian of the late Cretaceous, about 86 to 83 million years ago. The name references the region and town where it was found, and the fact that the holotype is a single right dentary. It serves as the first non-avian dinosaur named from Tajikistan, and the phylogenetic analysis in the description places it as a basal velociraptorine, which makes sense since it's also the oldest definitive velociraptorine. Once again, size estimates aren't really given, but Kansaignathus was likely around the same size as other velociraptorines. It probably filled a similar niche in its ecosystem. No other dinosaurs have been named from Yalovak, but fossils of Hadrosaurs, Tyrannosaurs, Ankylosaurs, Ornithomimids, and Therizinosaurs are present, as well as Darkids, the Paralligatorid Kansaignathus extensus, and Tajikosuchus macrodentis, which is potentially the oldest known alligatoroid. Now, let's take a little break from Eudromaeosaurs and talk about Ununlagians for a bit. For one, the description of Hesperornithoides in 2019 brought with it a new definition for Dromaeosauridae, which now excludes Ununlagians, which were split off into their own family, Ununlagianae, alongside Hauscaraptorines. This is because the matrix used in that description recovered Ununlagians and Hauscaraptorines as the sister group of Troodontids and Dromaeosaurs. I might do a separate video on Ununlagians in the future, but since I've already covered most of them in the Dromaeosaur videos, it's not high priority right now. Instead, I'm going to focus on a new Ununlagian from Brazil that was published on August 5th, 2021. Ypupiara lopai is, unfortunately, based on a specimen which no longer exists, since it was one of many fossil specimens destroyed in the 2018 fire that ravaged the National Museum of Brazil where it was kept. Thankfully, though, the holotype of Ypupiara, a right maxilla and dentary, was being described before the fire hit, and the paper was actually ready to be submitted around the same time the fire happened. It just got delayed because of it. There were also photographs taken of the type specimen before the fire, so while still tragic, the loss of the holotype doesn't completely prevent other scientists from studying it. It also helps that the specimen actually stayed in Brazil and was allowed to be studied by Brazilian scientists, unlike some other fossils which I will not specify at this moment. The genus name is derived from a word from the language of the native Tupi people, which means one who lives in the water, referencing a local mythical creature and the animal's inferred diet of fish, while the specific name honors Alberto Lopa, who discovered the holotype. Ypupiara is from the Marília Formation of Brazil, which dates to the Maastrichtian of the late Cretaceous, about 70 to 66 million years ago, so it's possible this animal was one of the last non-avian dinosaurs. Based on close relatives, Ypupiara is estimated to reach a length of 2 to 3 meters or 6.5 to 10 feet long, and it likely preyed on small vertebrates like lizards, mammals, and fish. The phylogenetic analysis used in the description placed Ypupiara as the sister taxon to Austroraptor, which is interesting, as while Austroraptor is also potentially from the Maastrichtian, it is much bigger than Ypupiara, likely reaching lengths of 5 to 6 meters. Also mentioned in the description was a Dromaeosaur metatarsus, also found in the Marília Formation around the same time as Ypupiara, and formerly named Lopasaurus, which was lost at some point in 1980. In the paper, the authors tentatively referred the specimen to Unalagianae, but noted that it cannot be determined whether it's the same animal as Ypupiara due to the lack of overlapping material. Given the fact that other formations have yielded multiple unalagiid species before, this was clearly the right call. Not a lot of other named taxa are known from the Marília Formation, but there are titanosaurs like Boru titan, Trigonosaurus, and Uberaba titan, the abelosaurid Kurupiatata, which was also named in 2021, and at least 4 Notasuchian species, Itosuchus, Labidiosuchus, Pyrosaurus, and Uberabasuchus. The final entry for 2021 is a new Dromaeosaurid from Europe, specifically the Wessex Formation from the Barremian of the early Cretaceous, approximately 125 million years ago. Officially published on December 17, 2021, Vectiraptor greeni, or Green's Isle of White Thief, was described by Nick Longrich, David Martill, and Megan Jacobs based on 2 dorsal vertebrae and a sacrum. While this might not seem like much, they were enough to find 2 unique derived traits, called autapomorphies, that were distinct from Ornithodesmus, a possible dromaeosaur also from Wessex. The size of the vertebrae indicate that Vectiraptor was a relatively large dromaeosaur, around the size of Deinonychus, about 2.5 to 3 meters or 8 to 10 feet long. Large dromaeosaur teeth are also known from the Wessex Formation, and some might belong to Vectiraptor, but the authors refrained from formally referring them to their new genus. Due to the sparsity of the remains, Vectiraptor was not put in a phylogenetic analysis, but characteristics of the vertebrae led to the authors classifying it as a Eudromaeosaur, making it one of the oldest known members of the clade, only slightly younger than Utahraptor and Yurgovuchia from North America. This makes it significant on several levels. First, it helps fill up part of the gap in the Dromaeosaur fossil record, especially in Europe. It expands the known diversity of theropods in the Wessex ecosystem, and it led the authors to conclude that Eudromaeosaurs were one of several groups to enter Europe during the early Cretaceous, potentially originating in North America, with some having migrated to Asia through Europe. This paper kind of kickstarted this recent fascination I've had with Cretaceous Europe, which seems to have been a melting pot of Laurasian and Gondwanan dinosaurs, suggesting that Europe was a sort of bridge from which certain dinosaur groups crossed over from Laurasia to Gondwana and vice versa. This could also explain how other groups like Titanosaurs, Abelisaurs, Iguanodonts, and Spinosaurs ended up in both Laurasia and Gondwana. Other new dinosaurs from the Wessex Formation in 2021 I'll briefly mention include a new iguanodont called Brystonius, which was originally considered a specimen of Mantellosaurus, and two new Spinosaurs, Ceratoseucops and Riparovenator. And there is more new Wessex stuff to come, including the long-awaited Eotyrannus monograph and more remains of the enigmatic Yaverlandia, both of which will likely get videos of their own once they're published. That is, assuming this video comes out before either paper gets published. The last paper I'll be covering in today's video isn't a new taxon, but an interesting study which examined characters associated with the maxilla to determine the phylogenetic relationships of Eudromaeosauria. The paper was published online on February 21, 2022, but a version of it as a thesis was available about a year prior. Overall, this study supports the model of Eudromaeosauria being split into three subfamilies: Sauronitholestinae, Dromaeosaurinae, and Velociraptorinae, all distinguishable by characteristics like the ratio of the height and length of the maxilla, as well as placement and size of the maxillary fenestrae. The authors even infer that some of these characters may be related to niche partitioning between Eudromaeosaur species, with the long and thin-snouted Velociraptorines preferring prey smaller than them, the short and deep-snouted Dromaeosaurines preferring prey around their size or bigger, and the intermediate-snouted Sauronitholestines preferring a wider range of prey from small to around the same size. At the base of Eudromaeosauria is the subfamily Sauronitholestinae, which in this paper consists of two clades, one including Bamboraptor and Sauronitholestes langstoni, and the other including Atrociraptor and Acroraptor. The latter is interesting, as Acroraptor has been traditionally classified as a velociraptorine since its description in 2013. While some folks in the paleo community seem to be aware of this fact for a long time, this is the first time this placement has been published. As it turns out, many of the supposed characters which supported a velociraptorine identity for Acroraptor were the result of the maxilla being distorted during fossilization, and once it was corrected to the shape it would have had in life, those characters either disappeared or weren't as prominent. This calls into question the affinities of other alleged North American velociraptorines like Boreonychus and Dromaeosaur. Boreonychus has been recovered as a dromaeosaurine before, while Dromaeosaur has only been included in one paper so far, and neither of them were in this paper since they don't preserve maxillae, which obviously means they can't be tested for characters exclusive to the maxilla. Mickey Mortimer did place Dromaeosaur in the Lori matrix on her theropod database, where it emerged as an unalogene, so it's possible Dromaeosaur is an immigrant from South America, like how Alamosaurus is hypothesized to be, but now we're getting off track. More derived than Sauronitholestinae is a clade containing Dromaeosaurinae and Velociraptorinae. An interesting part of this study is the conclusion it makes on the placement of Deinonychus in Eudromaeosauria. As stated at the beginning of this video, Deinonychus, despite being one of the most completely known Eudromaeosaurs, is very unstable within Eudromaeosauria, having a mixture of different characters. This is somewhat reflected in the multiple trees presented, which place Deinonychus as the basalmost Sauronitholestine and in a polytomy with Sauronitholestinae, Dromaeosaurinae, and Velociraptorinae. However, the conclusion the paper seems to come to is that Deinonychus is the basalmost Dromaeosaurine, followed by the older Utahraptor, then Oculobator, which is the sister taxon to Dromaeosaurus in this analysis. Finally, there's Velociraptor, which not only alludes to a new velociraptor species, which has also been hinted at in several abstracts, including one presented at SVP, but it also places Velociraptor osmolske as closer to Linoraptor and Sagon than to Velociraptor mongoliensis, suggesting it doesn't belong in the genus Velociraptor and thus might need a new genus. The overall phylogeny of Velociraptor also somewhat lines up with the one presented in the description of Shri, Devi, and Kuru, with at least 3 distinct groups: the Velociraptor clade, the Linoraptor Sagon clade, and the Autosaurus clade. Of course, not all those taxa are included here, since most of them don't preserve maxillae. Overall, this is a pretty good paper and a template for my current phylogeny of Eudromaeosauria, though obviously it doesn't help a lot with the placement of taxa that don't have maxillae preserved. That's all for today's video. Up next will be the natural history of forest rockids, followed by the Megalania profile, and then the analysis of Monsters Resurrected Episode 2, T-Rex of the Deep. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and this is PaleoNerd signing out.